Hi, I'm Mrs. Payne. I teach 4th grade, and this is Hannah. She's my granddaughter, and she is in Mrs. McKnight's 1st grade. So you may have seen her around school and maybe even with me. So we are going to read chapter 7 from Humphrey to you tonight. Yay, chapter 7. We're almost halfway through the book, not quite. So Hannah's going to read you the name of the chapter and the question so that you can be listening for the answer to the question as we read it to you. Right there. 7.
The case of the colorful cards.
Awesome.
What did Mr. Morales want the class to do, Mrs. Brisbane?
All right. So what did they want? What did he want the class to do for Mrs. Brisbane?
We have no idea.
We have no idea yet. And just so you know, we are at Hannah's house, and she has 2 little sisters and a dog and a mom and a dad. So it may not be absolutely quiet during this video, and that's okay. You can probably hear Millie singing in the background as we're reading right now. So, the case of the colorful cards. When Kelsey brought me back on Monday morning, everybody rushed over. Whew, that's some black eye, Rosie exclaimed. Actually, it was purple and gray with pink and green stripes. But I didn't correct her. How's it feel? Mr. E asked her. Fine, Kelsey said. She set my cage on the table in front of the window and walked very carefully and very gracefully back to her desk. Boing, boing, Og greeted me cheerily. Then Simon came in and everybody wanted to touch the bump on his head. Okay, he told small Paul, but not too hard. That's nothing, Thomas said, holding the back of his head. I hit my head and had to get 95 stitches here. That explains a lot, just Joey muttered as he walked by. Have you ever had stitches? I have. They hurt. 95 stitches, though, that's a lot. Do you think he's really did? What do you think?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever get the answer in the book either. Tall Paul bent down and looked at Thomas's head. Funny, there's no scar. Do you suppose he'd have a scar if he'd had 95 stitches?
Yep.
I'm thinking he would have had a big scar.
Yeah.
95, Simon asked. 95, Simon asked. I'm pretty sure he didn't believe Thomas. Are you sure? If you got 95 stitches in your head, you'd be sure, Thomas said. My friends all went to their seats, and as soon as the bell rang, hopeful Holly raised her hand. Mr. E, we always have a vocabulary test on Monday, she said. There were lots of groans from the other students, and some of them went shh, shh. Well, we won't have one this Monday, Mr. E replied, because today we have, he didn't finish his sentence, because just then Mr. Morales walked into the classroom. He was wearing a tie with horses all over it. I wonder if they make a tie with hamsters all over it.
I guess.
Yeah, maybe. That might be worth looking for, huh? Class, I have another note from Mrs. Brisbane. She says, I'm getting stronger every day. Today I was actually able to put on my slippers. I think of you all every day. Slippers, Kelsey said. That's what ballerinas wear. And Mrs. Brisbane had said she'd be dancing soon. So, just as I thought, Mrs. Brisbane really was learning ballet. I have an address for her now, Mr. Morales said. So I think it would be nice if you'd all make cards and we'll send them off to her. Great idea, Mr. E said. Who's Mr. E?
So Mr. E is the class's sub.
Oh, well then who is the other guy, Mr. Morales?
Mr. Morales? I don't know yet.
Is he the principal?
Principal, yeah,
He's
principal.
principal. That's what I thought. All right, let's start at that bottom line. Great idea, Mr. E said. We'll start on it right away. After Mr. Morales left, Mr. E passed out colorful paper. He told my classmates to start writing their messages to Mrs. Brisbane while he gathered up art supplies. Holly's hand shot up in the air. They're over there on the shelf. I can show you. No thanks, Holly. You start writing, Mr. E replied. Now, be sure to make your card reflect your personality. Can I take this home and work on it tonight? Daniel asked. Try to do it now, Daniel, Mr. E told him. If you don't finish, you can take it home. Soon, all of my classmates were bent over their tables working, all except Joey. He stared at his paper, but he didn't write one word. I scrambled up to the top of my cage to see if I could read what my other friends were writing, but I couldn't make out the letters from so far away. I wanted to write to Mrs. Brisbane too, but I didn't dare take out my notebook in case someone saw it. And as much as I like my friends, my notebook is private. No one should ever read something that's private. Do you have a private notebook or anything? A journal?
Well, I do have 2 journals. I have one in Frozen 2 and one in Paw Patrol.
And are they private?
Well, not really. Millie and Lucy know about those 2.
Do they?
Millie will never stop trying to draw in my notebook.
I hope you shared.
Yeah, I do sometimes with a different notebook because those 2 are really special.
Cool.
So I don't let her use those ones. And she's still 4, so I know she'll scribble because I can see when she draws, she scribbles.
That's okay. Because she's just 4. While my friends wrote, things were clinging and clanging and rattling around. Mr. E poked around in the art supplies bins. Soon, there was a big mound of markers and boxes of colored pencils and crayons on the desk. I saw more construction paper, brightly colored yarn, scissors, glue, and jars of buttons, beads, and glitter. When Mr. E told my friends to take what art supplies they needed for their cards, everyone raced forward at once. I wanted those markers, Simon said. I got here first, Thomas replied, clutching the markers to his chest. I bet that doesn't happen in very many classrooms, huh?
That is mean.
Ooh, feathers, Phoebe said. Rosie rolled toward the desk. Hey, I need those, she said. Ooh, Rosie ran over my foot, Sophie complained. Did not, Rosie said. My friends never act like that when Mrs. Brisbane was in my class. My friends never acted like that when Mrs. Brisbane was in the classroom. I could hardly tell what anyone was saying because there was so much commotion. Suddenly, my whole body was shaken by the shrill and pain of a blast of a whistle. Everyone got quiet then. I didn't even have to look to know that Mrs. Wright was standing in the doorway. What's going on in here? She asked. We're making cards for Mrs. Brisbane, the substitute answered. What you're making is an uproar, she said. I could hear you way down the hall, and according to the school policy, you should not be able to hear what's going on in a classroom from the hallway. Mrs. Wright walked into the classroom, and I saw that she wasn't alone. Hurry up, Harry was with her. I don't suppose you noticed that one of your students was missing, she said. Harry hung his head and looked extremely unhappy. I guess I'm still getting used to all the students, Mr. E said. Come in, Harry. Make a card for Mrs. Brisbane. Mrs. Wright fingered the whistle hanging down from her neck. I braced myself just in case she blew it again. Mr. Edapopoulos, that's quite a name, isn't it? Edapopoulos, at Longfellow School, we don't permit our students to roam the halls whenever they want to, Mrs. Wright said. I found Harry staring into the windows of room 14. She sounded shocked. They're building an amazing tower, Harry exclaimed. What's amazing is that you weren't in your classroom like all the other students at school, Mrs. Wright said. I will have to report Harry to the principal. I'll handle this, Mr. E said. Mrs. Wright looked surprised. Really? You'll put in a report? Mr. E nodded. That's right, Mrs. Wright. I was surprised and relieved when Mrs. Wright and her whistle left the room. Phew, huh? But I was surprised that Hurry Up Harry was going to get in trouble. He'd gotten in trouble a lot at the beginning of the year for being late, but he'd been so much better until Mr. E arrived. Do I have to go to the office? Harry asked. No, Harry, but this class is just as much fun as room 14. Mr. E said, come on, let's make cards. Make them funny and bright with lots of pizzazz. Pizzazz? What on earth was pizzazz? I didn't hear that word. I'd never heard that word before. I'd never seen it on a vocabulary list either. Was it like glitter and beads and glue, or was it like pizza? What do you think? What do you think pizzazz means?
Pizza. Glitter, chewy. Yeah. I think it's about glitter and all of those other arts and crafts stuff.
Making it pretty cool looking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you like glitter and stuff?
Just a little. We don't have any glitter.
Oh, well, Grandma's got glitter at school. You can borrow it one of these days.
Ooh.
Yeah, and then you could spill it all over the floor. It'd be a big, wonderful, glittery mess. Do you think that classroom will look like that when they get done? Maybe.
I don't know.
All right. Was it like glitter and beads and glue, or was it like pizza? Whatever it was definitely a mystery word that I found very pie-whacking. That's what I thought it said, pie-whacking. I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah. Well, it's confused because, on the other pages, Mommy read pie-whacking. It was another mystery word.
Oh.
And we found out it was confusing.
Oh, confusing. Well, there you go. Now I know. I might have to use that word pie-whacking in my classroom one of these days. Wonder if my kids would know what it is. I hope they do. I hope they've been reading this book.
Yeah.
My friend spent the rest of the morning on the cards, working furiously. Feathers flew, scissors snipped, and there was glitter everywhere. Joey seemed to be struggling as he stared at his card. Maybe Joey needed help, but Mr. E didn't seem to notice. I think Mrs. Brisbane would have noticed. When the bell for lunch rang, my friends raced out the door while Mr. E restacked the art supplies. Everything okay? Miss Max said as she poked her head in the door. Fabulous, Mr. E said. Better than I ever expected. Wait, I'll walk to the lunchroom with you. At last, Og and I were alone. Og, I squeaked excitedly. Boing, he twanged. The class is a mess without Mrs. Brisbane, I shouted. The students are falling back into their bad habits. Harry's late again, and there's too much noise, and no vocabulary test or Sherlock Holmes. Og splashed wildly in the water side of his tank. Boing, 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 boing. I could tell he was almost as upset as I was, and I wanted to make Mrs. Brisbane a card. I said, boing, boing, and I want to find out where she is, I added. Boing, boing, boing. There was so much to think about. I wondered if Harry would get back to class on time. I wondered if Mr. E would teach us something in the afternoon. I wondered if Miss Brisbane would ever be back. Do you miss your teacher when she's gone?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yes.
I'm going to hurry and get a drink, okay?
Okay, so we're going to pause go ahead. We'll pause it for a sec. Okay, we're back. Drink done. My fellow students came back after lunch, all except one. Hurry up, Harry wasn't missing, but forgetful Phoebe was. However, she showed up right after the bell rang. Sorry, Mr. E said. Not a problem, he answered. Take a seat because now we're going to play Math Monsters. He took his fingers and pulled out the corners of his mouth and the corners of his eyes. He looked pretty creepy, especially when he made a scary laugh like a witch. After all, you know what's coming soon, he continued. Yes, that was Chewy.
Yep, that was our dog.
There was a pause, and then Thomas shouted, Halloween! Then everyone else started shouting, Halloween. My classmates seemed happy about it, but I remembered last year's Halloween with creepy smiling pumpkins and ghosts and goblins and monsters. Now it was coming back. Eek! After school, Og and I had some visitors. Hello, Mr. E greeted them. What can I do for you? We were in this class last year, a soft voice said. Oh, I love the kids from last year. It was Speak Up Saya. She was one of my best friends in room 26 last year. We came to see Humphrey and Og. Be my guest, said Mr. E said, and soon Og and I were surrounded by familiar, friendly faces. Hi, Humphrey Dumphrey. Bad news about Mrs. Brisbane. That was good old AJ's loud voice. Yes, I agreed. Poor Humphrey, poor Og. You must miss Miss Brisbane a lot, said Golden Miranda, and she was just a wonderful friend with a terrible dog. Do you remember that part in the book last year?
No, I don't remember.
And her dog was barking, and when Golden Miranda took Humphrey home for the weekend.
Nope, don't remember.
Yeah, it was one of those kind of, I felt bad for Humphrey. But I'm sure she misses you too. Hi, Humphrey, Winky says hi, said Mandy, whose hamster Winky was a friend of mine. It was great to see my old friends, but it was sad too, because they reminded me of happy days in room 26 with Mrs. Brisbane, my teacher. Or was she? I don't know. Humphrey's Dictionary. It's a mystery to me why humans enjoy a very frightening holiday like Halloween. Okay, that's the end of chapter 7. We hope you enjoyed it. And Hannah's going to read you the question again. Hopefully you heard it, the answer to it.
What did Mr. Morales want the class to do for Mrs. Brisbane?
All right, so hopefully you know the answer now. Hannah, what should they do with their papers?
You guys should do your blue papers, and you guys should bring them to News Park Out of School, and you might get a prize if they call your name. So
where do they put them?
You guys have to put them in the red basket by the lunchroom.
All right. And you know about the prizes?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Because I got called on
You
Friday.
You did. On Friday, your name got called. Did you get a cool prize?
Uh-huh.
Good. All right, guys. So, happy readings. Enjoy Humphrey. And we will see you later. Say hi to us in the hall when you see us. Okay. Bye. We're out. See ya.